All right, so I think we are live, and I'm going to get started then, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone to this session where we're going to have a lovely conversation more than anything else about on having WiL. We are WiL, the Women in Leadership program, and I'm very, very pleased to have with me colleagues who have been part of the past 3 cohorts. One is still going to be joining. She's been held up, but we do have Zannie Block here, and we also have Dini. I can't see Dini on my screen, but I'm assuming that Dini is here. Oh, Samantha has come as well. So if Dini and Samantha can please put on their cameras so that we can see them. But these are my 2 colleagues who have come from, 3 colleagues who have come from the past 3 cohorts. And my first job is going to be to have us all introduce ourselves. I will start off. I'm Denise Zinn. I have been the WiL program leader. I can't leave out my facilitator Birgit, who's not on screen. She's leading another session, but and of course Michelle, we part of the WiL team, so a very warm welcome to you from the WiL team. And now I'd like to ask the panelists who are going to be in conversation with me to just briefly introduce themselves, to say who they are, what their position is, and which institution they are from. And we'll start with our pioneering cohort panelist, Samantha Govender. Please give your title, Samantha, as well, your position and where you are.
Okay, thank you so much. Good day, colleagues. I'm Samantha Govender from the University of Zululand. I'm currently an associate professor, and I'm the Deputy Dean for Teaching and Learning. And I was part of the cohort, the first cohort in 2020.
Okay, can we go over to you, Dini? You have to unmute.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you see my video?
I did see you.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right. Thanks. My name is Dini Mawela. I'm a professor of pediatrics based at Makgatu Health Sciences University. However, interestingly, in the School of Dentistry at Makgatu Health Sciences University, I was part of the 2021 cohort at WiL. Thank you very much, Denise, and thanks for the invitation.
Thank you, Dini. And then from our most recent cohort who have just finished, can I ask you, Zannie, please to introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Denise, for the invitation. So my name is Zannie Bock, and I am the Deputy Dean of Teaching and Learning in the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at the University of the Western Cape. So it's quite a mouthful. I'm also Associate Professor in the Linguistics Department at the same university.
Okay, great. Thank you. And again, thanks to the colleagues from the 3 cohorts for joining. I was just going to get straight into the conversation with him, but then I realized that there may be some people online who don't know anything at all about the program. So I've just got a few short slides where I will just do a quick introduction to the program, and then we're going to start our conversation. So I learned this new thing called the NOAA principle from last year's summit. And I think it's such an apt way of introducing how we have approached the Women in Leadership program under the auspices of HELM. And the principle goes something like this: there will be no more credit given for predicting rain. It's time to build the ark. And I think that is really how we have approached WiL. We have said, how do we build this ark? How do we build women's leadership in the higher education sector? We know the why question. We know the answer to the why question. And of course, there have been many studies that have shown why, the extent to which norms and gender bias in The Academy remains. It's very present. It's still something that holds women back within the space and is manifested in a very disproportionate number of women in relation to, in comparison to men in the higher education leadership positions and senior positions in the sector. We also now want to just give you a quick overview of what our curriculum is. And our curriculum is composed of many components. One set of really important components are 10 sessions, which we run every 2 weeks or so. They are half-day sessions, 3 hours, sometimes a bit longer. And they go through from the orientation, our focus on leading from the inside out. We focus on the paradigm within which we present this program and adopt our approaches, which is a complexity paradigm. We look at leading in times of crisis and challenge. We focus on the higher education missions. And then importantly, we look at leading and working with people, which we think is critical to leadership. We look at working with finances and explaining the finances in the higher education sector. We do a little bit of career planning and advancing, or at least an orientation to that. We focus, as we get towards the end of the program, on building networks and how important this is, global, regional, and national. And then finally, in our 10th session, we do quite a deep reflection and review as we wrap up. But of course, it's more than the content in these sessions. We also have peer learning groups, which meet in between the fortnightly sessions, where camaraderie and the cohort is built. We also provide this as a space where people can learn from each other. They meet on their own time, and this adds depth and really lived experience into the program. And then we have each participant is provided with an individual coach, an experienced coach, qualified coach, someone familiar with higher education, and this then helps support them in their personal journey in leadership. So besides the sessions, we come to the issue of, so what is the impact of these? And we thought that today, rather than go into detail about the program itself, which we have done in several conferences and summits before this one, is to actually find out from the participants themselves what they have experienced and ask them whether or how they, in fact, did the following. Did their self-awareness increase? And if so, how? Did their leadership capacity improve? Did they get an enhanced perspective on higher education? Did they develop a sense of agency? And did their participation through that agency actually increase? Were they able to apply their learning in this context, and were they able to live what they learned? And then have they started to see higher education, the context within which they are based, after 3 cohorts, which is actually a very short time. It's only been 3 years and maybe 2 or 3 people from each institution. Are they able to start feeling the change? And I'm really interested in finding out a little bit more about this sort of broad arena, which forms kind of our theory of change in relation to the women in going to leave the slide on this, but I've got just a few really ask in rounds, and I'd like to ask them to answer this question as simply and as honestly as they can. And for this first, I'm going to start with cohort 1's participant Samantha, and then we'll move on to Dini and then on to Zannie. And for the next questions, we might change the order a bit. So Samantha, and then Dini, and then Zannie. I'd like to ask you what made you apply for and want program offered by HELM in the first place? Samantha? You would please unmute Samantha. You currently on mute.
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. In fact, with me, I was actually nominated by my institution to be part of the first cohort, and that was by my former dean. My former dean of the faculty, the director from the Teaching and Learning Center, and also the acting director, the DVC, actually completed a nomination form, and he had submitted it for me. And in that nomination form, I had a look at it, and they were expected to provide characteristics of my strengths and my weaknesses, and related to my my leadership and management role. They were also supposed to expected to provide a motivation and a rationale why I should actually participate in the HELM leadership program. And they also included my potential in university management and leadership, and what they envision my leadership capacity in the near future. So those were some of the things they had completed, and then they did ask me if I was keen, and I was definitely keen to pursue the program. So very
Great.
briefly in a nutshell. Yes.
Great. Thank you, Samantha. How about you, Dini?
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. For me as well, the then dean left very quickly, and I was pulled out from a clinical department as an HOD, had never been in management of the
Dini, sorry to interrupt you.
Okay,
it's breaking up a bit.
Better?
That's much better.
So,
yeah.
So I said I'll take a step back and explain that the dean in the School of Medicine had indicated that he was leaving, instructed to come into the dean's office to support the dean. So my nomination was actually from the deputy dean and the DVC Teaching and Learning. And at that point, it looked like you cannot pull out now. We are nominating you as a form of support. We rest within you. So it was both a reward and a form of support for me going into the dean's office. And so it was important because I had indicated that I would need support. So my nomination really, as I said, was a form of support. So once we got in and we settled, I also realized that this was hard work, but it was all worth it. Thank you.
Okay, good. We'll come find out about the hard work with the next question. Zannie, how about you?
Yes.
Thanks, Denise. Well, as I told you, I was appointed Deputy Dean of Teaching and Learning, and I hadn't been a head of department or anything before that. So I felt very unprepared for the post, and I'd never been on a leadership course. And then the invite came into our inbox, and at our university, we had to nominate ourselves, and then the DVC approved the nomination. And I really liked the look of the course because it talked about, creating a space for women leaders to safely explore their own power in shaping the higher education sector. And there were just words in that, in the brochure that I received that I liked, like peer learning and, exploring your power and women leadership. And so I suppose I had myself experienced in my own career the strength and value of female leadership, as well as the difficulties that many women have in recognizing and owning their leadership roles. So I thought, well, for me as a woman, stepping into a leadership position, and actually I'd already been I've been in this position since middle of 2019, but of course with COVID we were just thrown in the deep end, and it was sink or swim, and there wasn't time to think about leadership courses. And I just thought, well, I myself have appreciated having women leaders in my working life, and I wanted to learn how to be a better woman leader. And so for me, that was a big thing. So That's definitely why I took it up, and I was not disappointed. It was, I think, in my next responses, I'll explain some of the things that I found so eye-opening for me, having never been on a leadership course before.
Great, great. Thank you. And so the next question is actually probably the sort of the core question in the set that I've asked you to think about. And this relates to your most important takeaways, as we call them, or the lessons that you learn as a participant in the program. We are aware that those lessons might be multifaceted. So I'm going to give you just a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes maybe for this next question, each of you to just say a little bit more about what did you take away from the program as a participant. And Samantha, I'm going to go back to you because you've had a little bit of a rest while the others spoke. And we'll go to your perspectives. And now remember, viewers, that Samantha did this program 3 years ago, 2 years ago. She was part of the first cohort. So over to you, Samantha.
Okay, thank you. I'm also going to switch my camera off so that, I don't have issues with bandwidth, but I just want to check, are you all able to hear me clearly? Am I not breaking up?
Hearing you clearly.
Good.
Thanks.
Okay, all right. So in fact, I was very, very fortunate. I was among the first cohort and I was amongst 26 professional women participants. And all these colleagues were from various levels of seniority. They had a wealth of knowledge, and and I also was exposed to experienced facilitators and also listening to both accomplished national and international keynote speakers. It was really greatly an honor for us. Remember when we did this program, it was a cohort and we had to do everything online. So we would be online for majority of the sessions. And that was really a wonderful and an amazing learning opportunity and experience for me. So the program was also very, very relevant. As institutions of higher learning, we definitely know today they are rather very complex. They are difficult to understand, and even it's more difficult and challenging to lead and manage. So the program equipped us perfectly because all that was offered in the program we were able to deal with, and it was applicable to what we were dealing with at institutions of higher learning. Personally, from a personal perspective, this program has taught me as a leader, I would definitely need to respond to the many challenges that I face with much intelligence, strategy, and also expertise. And also participating in this program, it provided me an opportunity to improve and also strengthen my leadership and management skills. So, Prof. Zinn, I think let me stop there to give the others an opportunity.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Samantha. I mean, you sort of provided a kind of an overview of the various areas that you took something away from our very first cohort, where we were still experimenting with quite a bit at that time. As you mentioned, COVID was something that forced us to have to adjust, as you all know, in higher education, very quickly from having set up a program that was meant to be face-to-face workshops into this online modality. So you were sort of our testing ground in a sense with that. So thanks for your contribution. And then in came cohort number 2, Dini, where having been thrown in at the deep end and instructed by your your deputy dean, from being a pediatrician and head of department into the deep end. So what did you take away? What was your experience like in the program, and what did you actually find useful that you could apply and do?
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. As I mentioned, but once the orientation session was done, I realized this is hard work. So the first thing that had to happen with me was to commit. I made a commitment to myself. I made a commitment to the process that I am going to do this and I'm going to finish it. I will find time to do it. So that was the first thing that needed to happen. But once we were in, I realized that I'm not alone. There is a community of women leaders out there who actually are dealing with the same issues that I have to deal with. However, on this course, I found that there was support, particularly the peer learning groups, for me was a very important aspect. We met on a Monday afternoon and one really looked forward to those sessions. We didn't tell you in those sessions, you wanted us to work, but we got onto these sessions to talk, to cry, to gossip, to do everything else that girls do when they meet. So I found a lot of support in those groups. So that was great. I also learned that the solutions we actually talk about and we bring about on a daily basis are actually not really new or unique. We can learn from each other, and from communicating with each other, we really become better. You know, if you look at somebody's a way of managing things and you learn something that you can bring into your own workspace. But it was also important for me to know that it's all within us. You know, we lead from inside. I became a bolder leader when I realized that I don't have to be looking at other people. It starts from within me. Being part of the network, as I said, was great. We could talk on WhatsApp, we could share ideas, we could ask each other questions on WhatsApp on a weekly basis, and that was good. But I also learned while listening to other people that my context is important. So as we were looking at transforming the spaces we were in, it became very clear and see how I bring that change. You would know that SMU has extremely interesting challenges. So yeah, so that was important. I also learned to be a very patient leader. I realized that change takes time, but I also figured out that we cannot.
Dini, sorry, that last sentence, it broke
not
up. It
take
broke
our
up.
roles as advocates seriously.
Okay.
The course made me realize, and your first slide was very apt and interesting for me. It will always rain. It will hail.
Okay, so Dini,
Sorry about
we
that.
are losing.
It will always
losing.
rain, and
yeah.
And will always be hail, but we need to be building the arcs. The time to plan and think, we need to be building the arcs.
Okay. Thank you, Dini. Some of what you were saying was breaking up.
I learned that it's okay to take care of self. And this came about from the coaching sessions a lot. That busyness in the long run makes me very ineffective, that we all need to come up for air at some point. And my biggest thing that I learned in the coaching sessions was thanks. Switch to my phone. Thanks. Let me leave it there. We'll come back to it. I was talking about self-care that I learned from coaching, that I'm really taking with me even now.
Okay.
That is
Good.
okay. It's okay to take time off.
Okay, thanks. So Dini's gone back on mute. And we're going to go over. Thanks, Dini. We heard most of what you said, but it was breaking up quite a bit. So we're going to go over now.
Must be intentional with blocking space to say this is my time. Thank you very much, Dini.
Thank you, Dini. And as always, even though it was breaking up quite a bit during your speech, I've managed to take some notes because you've said some really valuable things. So Dini's going to change devices now because that was part of what was causing a problem. And we're looking forward to hearing what you have experienced, Zannie. You're the most recent, so it's very fresh for you. We finished the program this year at in the middle of October. And so you've not had that much time to reflect on anything, but you are a very reflective person. So we're looking forward to hearing what you took away from the course and what you observed, what you experienced, and what you would want to perhaps share with people about it.
Thank you, Denise. Well, I've just finished my reflective essay, my portfolio. So for me, it was really a very, very worthwhile, interesting course. And I just want to pick up on what Dini was saying about self-care. Our second session was all about self-care. And this was really revelatory to me because you know, I'm very conscious about issues of self-care, and I've read lots of self-care help books, handbooks, whatever you call it. But I always felt self-care was something I had to manage as an individual at home. It wasn't something I could integrate into my work life. And I suppose the focus on self-care somehow legitimated it as a very valid concern for the workplace. And that somehow enabled me to embrace it and to take it seriously instead of always just pushing it up to the back of my head. And also through my coaching sessions, my very first coaching session, my coach sort of challenged me. She says, well, why are you so tired and exhausted and burnt out? That's because you said yes, you know, however many times. I have 14 postgraduate students. She says, Zannie, how did you land up with 14? You must have said yes 14 times. And that was a sort of a light bulb moment. And I realized that actually I have to say no, even though I'm often interested in the project or I like the student, I really have to think about how much I can fit into my day and into my week and into my semester. And, you know, so for me, that was a very important, that was probably the most important learning. And it's one that I'm still integrating and I'm still trying to live it, changing the structure of my day, having a definite end to the day instead of just allowing yourself to work until you can barely move, you know, glued to the laptop as we all are. And I also realized it's something that's very important for leadership. I work with lots of young people, young women and men, and they're all very passionate, work very hard, very committed. And I think if I can model self-care, I in a way give them the space to take care of themselves. So I sort of feel that this is a theme which is not focused on enough in our higher education sector. So that's something I would definitely want to take into my work with the postgraduate cohort that I work with, the graduate lecturing assistants, and into my mentoring of younger staff. Because that for me was transformative. I learned how to say no. And that means I've got more time to do things like exercise, spend time with my family and friends, which makes the work-life balance better. So I suppose that was a big one. And then, you know, just in terms of the leadership styles, of course, the session on complexity leadership was fascinating. I really felt affirmed by that because I suppose I see things as always in a balance and, you know, that the world is a complex place. So for me, that was very affirming. And I also really, really enjoyed Prof. Sibongile Mutwa's presentation from NNMU. I see she was on the program yesterday. I'm sorry I didn't attend. And the phrase that really stood out for me was she talked about, there's no more time for the leader as hero. It's now the leader as host. And that really just stuck with me and it resonated because I thought leadership as host. And I thought, but that's what I do. I'm always taking care of people, creating a context, making sure everyone knows what they've got to do, setting things up, creating contexts for others to work in or grow, often in a leadership position, making sure that everything runs as it's meant to and people feel comfortable and everyone feels included and heard and seen and all of that. But I'd never seen that as a leadership strength. I just thought that was me, how I was. And I also thought it was a very female characteristic, being sort of like the mothering side of you coming through. And I suddenly realized that that is a strength of female leadership. And so often in the workplace, it's the women who create the context and set up the platform for a man to leap onto and shine. And I suddenly realized that that's okay, because, it's not really okay. What I wanted to say was, my role is also a leadership role. Even if I'm not always the one to jump onto the platform, my leadership is important. And so I guess I felt that I was affirmed in my style of leadership through that presentation and the other components of the course that kind of affirmed that the complexity, the caring, the leader as host, that really resonated, that phrase. So those are some of my big takeaways.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for those insights into the program and probably your most important takeaways from them. A third question I want to ask you, before we perhaps open it up a little bit more to see if there's anything in the chat, is what do you think is the best way or most constructive way to sustain what you have gained? Because, as you all know, we attend programs and while we're in it, as Dini said, we work hard, we give up the time, we do the self-care and so on because we're reminded. But once it ends, what then? And so I'd like to ask all of you how, first of all, maybe going back to Samantha again, what have you been able to sustain? And I suppose importantly, as I said in my last slide, is there a way in which you're starting to feel that the impact of what you learned and what you are applying is in some way manifesting within your leadership context? So I know that sounds complex. Let me summarize it. What is it that you think best sustains what you've gained from the program? And are you starting to see the impact in some way in your context? Samantha, are you?
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
No, we definitely, because if we look back and reflect on where we've come and what we were doing previously, in fact, the current post that we're holding now expects us to actually apply what we've learned in our current management and leadership. Like if you take me for an example, I was an HOD previously, and now I'm also sitting as I was the acting deputy dean, and now I'm also sitting in the position of the deputy dean. So that knowledge that we've gained, that insight that we gained, we definitely expected to put it into practice. And now we're never ever going to be perfect when we're leading. We're always learning and developing and growing. And I think that was very, very important. The network we had with those colleagues during that time made a very, very big difference. And it helped us, it capacitated us. It also, most importantly, it increased our confidence. And even now, when we're sitting in these positions, we are able to lead with much confidence. We are able to lead from an informed perspective because the program was tailor-made such that we grow in whatever we're doing. And I think most importantly, we are able to apply what we learn. So it's not just from a theoretical perspective. I think most importantly, like you mentioned, we're able to live it each and every day. Thank you.
Thanks, Samantha. Dini, are you with us? Would you be able to say how, it's just been 1 year, but how would you sustain what you've gained? And What is anything visible in terms of impact?
Yes, Denise, for me, actually, it's been a very interesting journey. And remember,
Oh dear.
I
Dini,
came
we again having problems hearing you.
back from the course back into the school of
Dini, we can't actually hear you at all. It's really breaking up badly. Are you on your phone? Or are you, I mean, are you using your phone's network or your computer, the internet? Because it's really breaking up. I wonder if you don't want to type some of what you want to say into the chat, Dini, and then we can read it, and in the meantime, we can get Zannie's input. Would you be able to do that? Yeah, because we've lost you now. We can't hear you at all. So I'm going to ask Zannie, maybe just to take over with her responses to that question. So Zannie, the question, of course, is how do you think this can be sustained? You've just finished, but how do you think this can be sustained? And where do you? I think I'm going to have to ask you where you expect to see impact, because it's just ended for you.
Yes, well, I think, I think it's something that has to come from within. And it reminds me of what one of the earlier participants said. I think it was maybe Dini, that
Yes.
The course was interesting for me because it wasn't all about theory. Yes, Samantha said it wasn't all about theory. It was also about applying it. And for me, it wasn't even just about applying it. It was about embodying it in a way. And I think that, when you have some of those light bulb reflective moments, then you start to feel some change from within. And it's that strength which you can tap into, because I suppose that's your power, whatever. You realize I can say no, I can set boundaries, I can take care of myself, I can be a good leader, I can be the sort of leader I like to be, and it's okay. I don't have to be a leader according to anybody else's books, and the way I do it is also good. It's just that feeling of affirmation, of taking, recognizing that you have some strength. So I think that's what I gained. And I think, I do a lot of work with postgraduate students. I'm involved with tutors and graduate lecturing assistants, and I have lots of postgraduates of my own. So I play a lot of mentoring roles in the faculty. And I think that this is a really important thing that I can do in terms of taking this forward and giving people that same confidence in themselves, just by modeling it and by saying it and by prioritizing it, as you and Birgit did in the course. I think that was, for me, it was like you are allowed to take the space. You're allowed to take up some space and say no and protect that space. So I think that was really important for me. And I think it will, but I think it has to come from within. So at the moment, I'm just trying to protect myself a little bit. Not protect, that's the wrong word, but I'm trying to actually change my daily structure a bit so that I don't work, I don't work on weekends if I can help it. Although I did have to write my WiL reflective essay on Sunday. But anyway, so it's like, how do I bring around change in my daily structure such that I maintain that life-work balance so that I can better role model that for others and give them the space to also do the same. So I suppose that's my thing that I'm trying to integrate into my life.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And I think one of the things that one is waiting to see how that would happen is, how does this kind of become a force field, in a sense? The cohorts who have completed in year one, we had, I think there were 25 people. I can't remember. Michelle will remember the numbers. And in the second cohort, we had 31 and eventually 29. And in this third cohort, we started out with 36 and 35 actually are finishing. So, if you add up those numbers, it's getting close to 100 people across the sector who are in senior positions. And, one just wonders, at what point does one start feeling that impact inside of the system? So thanks for all three of you coming from different cohorts, from cohort 1 through to cohort number 3, for your insights that you shared about how you got into it, as well as kind of what your main takeaways were, and then how you think this can be sustained. I just want to check whether Dini was able to write anything into the chat, because we lost her because of her the internet problems that she's having. And she's saying, and Dini is usually a person of few words. And she says one of the things is that she's been able to define a clearer career path. She says she's now allowed to be around management tables where decisions are taken. She is greatly more self-aware, and she's able to raise her hand when she needs support. I think all of those things that I think especially women leaders often are perhaps feeling and thinking they cannot do. One of the things, of course, that came through very clearly in the program was the sense of an imposter syndrome. I mean, all the way from some of our guest presenters through to the participants saying that this is a really big piece. And so what Dini has shared in the chat, allowed to be around management tables, that it comes from within, both Dini and Zannie saying that, as well as Samantha, and that one can, in fact, raise your hand when you need support. You don't have to know it all. So maybe just before we've got until 8:15, let's just take up some questions that have been coming through from viewers, from the audience, in terms of questions that have come in. I see some of you have responded to them already, but one question that has come in, and maybe the panelists want to respond to that, is in which ways has the coaching component integrate with what you actually learned in the program? What was the connection between the two, the coaching component and the other aspects of the program, the sessions that you attended, as well as, I suppose, as the peer learning groups? So that was one question. And then the next question was about who is eligible for the program. And I want to ask Michelle, maybe, I know she's here in a support capacity, but she's really the administrator who makes sure people know what the eligibility is and how people apply. So maybe if we can start with the first question about the coaching and its integration or interaction with the rest of the program. Is there anybody who'd like to answer that from the three panelists? How did you experience it integrated? So I can give you a theoretical thing about how we set it up, but how did you experience it? Who's ready to say something?
Okay, Prof. Prof. Zinn, I can try.
Okay, good. Start, Samantha.
In fact, I found the coaching very, very valuable because it actually expected us to do a lot of self-reflection. And even the sessions, they were not theoretically based. We had to reflect on our current practice, and it didn't really give us, how can I say, with the case studies, it didn't provide us with answers. You had to go back and you had to do self-reflection, introspection, and you had to see, this is the scenario that I'm faced with, and how best can I able to deal with it? So during that sessions, we were given like questions or tasks to do, and then in the next session, we were able to chat on a one-on-one basis. How would you deal with this? And do you think how you dealt with it, it was a best way to deal with it? And if you're faced with that situation again, do you think that was appropriate? And so on. So I found that really very, very relevant. We were not just dealing with book scenarios, but things that we were actually facing in our day-to-day leadership and management roles.
Thanks, Samantha. And Zannie, do you want to add to that?
Yes, I can add to it. I think the coaching, was, as Samantha said, the space for reflection. It was a one-on-one. My coach asked very good critical questions, or she was quite good at sort of pinpointing or challenging you on certain areas. And I think that was very helpful. I think, overall, the HELM course was very, very well structured. And, I say this as a teaching and learning person, just having, been through 2.5 years of online, that the coaching and the peer learning groups, which were fabulous, provided that kind of sense of connection, and you were actually able to form relationships with people. And then obviously most of our seminars were online, but then those 2 days, there's 2 times 2 days when we met in person, and I missed the mid-year one because I was at a conference, but the end of the year one, because it was real, and it was human beings, and it was people, and you could sort of talk to each other and draw energy from each other. And I think for me, I just realized that actually all the components are essential to make up the course. I would love to have met my coach in person, but unfortunately that wasn't possible. But I think, I think we sometimes forget about the need for that interpersonal connection. And you can achieve it maybe on Zoom if you're on a one-on-one or a small group, but you achieve it so much more easily when you are in person, in a room, laughing and joking with others.
Thank you very much. And Dini has just made a short line saying the coaching component for me was the most important. She also says that it enabled her to lead from a full cup. And there was in our self-care sessions, we said you can't pour from an empty cup. What Dini is alluding to is that the cup from which I think she's able to lead and the participants lead. I mean, building also on Zannie's and Samantha's point about self-care and why it's so important. It's the whole idea of leading from a full cup. And I think every component contributed to filling that cup. So that in a sense is how they got integrated, the peer learning groups as well as the retreats, which were face-to-face. Fortunately, we were able to move back to doing some face-to-face and hybrid sessions where people could meet each other. So thank you to the two of you who spoke, but also to Dini who's speaking through the chat, if people will have a look at what's there. Michelle, do you want to quickly say something about who is eligible?
Yes, sure, I can do that. I mean, none of it's my decision. It's a team decision. But who is eligible is really those already in at least middle management positions, which in HELM we define as minimum of a head of an academic department. I know that some universities have what they call middle management teams in faculties and so on, but those positions might be different. So I've learned along the way that we specify that that's how we define it. And I think that really is the main criterion, Denise, wouldn't you agree?
Yes.
And that although we haven't really adhered to this, because clearly when people in those positions haven't been on any management and leadership development programs and feel that they might want to do so, we have specified, I think, that people should be in those positions for under 5 years. But really, I suppose it's also a case that we might all need programs or interventions or whatever we want to call them at any stage of our careers. So we haven't always adhered to the under 5 years. I know we do that for HELM's Foundations of Leadership program. So Denise, I don't know if you want to say anything on that issue, but the main criterion is minimum of a head of department level.
Yes, thanks for that, Michelle. So it's not a training program. It's not a capacity development program, as it were. We think women and others who are appointed into they already have the capacity to do what's needed. And I think the point that was made by all three of our panelists, but I think particularly I'm giving voice to Dini because I'm so conscious about the fact that Dini's sound is not coming through. But you know, one of the things that she spoke about is how it's all within us. You know, we lead from what is in us. And Zannie has said the same thing, and Samantha too, that it really starts with me. And that is why those sessions and the self-care sessions are right up front. We start with leading from the inside out. And so it's quite deliberate that we put those sessions up front. But then speaking to the eligibility, the connection with eligibility, if you are not already in such a position, the space to actually apply, to introspect, to reflect, you will see if you read the chat, Samantha has added that, you know, it was a space for introspection and reflection. And the program is a very reflective program. The participants there's so much, I think it's hard to touch on everything, but they are writing exercises constantly without any pressure, by the way. We don't let you go home and write long essays as homework. You do it in the session, except, of course, for the portfolio, the final portfolio, where we do expect you to reflect on what you have learned. But everything happens inside of the session. And so the reflection we see as really, really important. We see getting to know yourself as really important because you lead from who you are. Finding help as being really important. So the eligibility criteria relate to you being able to draw on all of those, as well as find a way to apply what you're learning within the context in which you find yourself. So we've had from HODs all the way up to DVCs in the program, one person who transitioned from being a dean to a DVC, and that was very, very valuable for that cohort to actually be able to hear what some of the challenges are and to hear how one's perspective broadens the higher you go up in the system. You see more, you understand more. So eligibility is a growing thing, but it's about growth. So to answer that question that came through, I'm watching the time, we have about 5 minutes left. I don't know if there is another question that has perhaps come through the chat. Otherwise, I will try to sum up some of what's come through so far. Is there anything else, Michelle, that has come up?
No, nothing further. That was it. Okay,
so I'm going to ask the participants if they want to close maybe with one thing. You know, they should be used to doing this because we always used to close the session. What's the one thing that you'd want to say that has perhaps not yet been said, or that you want to say by way of just rounding off what you have shared with us today? Can we start again with you, Samantha?
Okay, no problem, because I'm actually having another meeting also at Cohort. So my takeaway, I think, will be to actually lead with humility, and that always remember that your success lies in the success of others. I think that's very, very important. I always tell myself this each and every day.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Dini, are you able, can we hear you? Just put your mic back on, unmute. Let's see if we can hear you. Or do you want me just to read what you've said?
Can you hear me?
Speak, Dini, let's see. Okay, so what Dini has written is that development of people is key. development of women is non-negotiable. So thanks very much for that as a key takeaway from you, Dini. And then from you, Zannie?
Well, all I can think of at the moment is every time someone asks me to say something, press pause and then go home and look at what is on your to-do list and decide and weigh it up. And then don't be scared to say no if you can't do it. You just physically don't have the time, no matter how interesting it may seem. So that's where I'm at the moment. And this is, as I said, this is something I feel I need to role model for the people who I work with and mentor.
Great. Thank you so much. The press pause was something that comes up all the time whenever we said, so what do we do when we're faced with this? That has become quite a mantra. Press pause. Take time to think. Because without thinking first, your responses are likely to not be as considered and as wise as they could be. Because in that pause, you can ask others for assistance. You can think through the issues, the context, the people who you are dealing with. And that is really, really an important part of leadership, to not simply react. So just by way of sum up then in the last 2 or so minutes, Samantha, I know you've got to be somewhere at 1:15, so please feel free to exit if you have to. But I'm just going to pick up on 1 or 2 things from my notes here. How people come into this program is often they get nominated by other people who see the potential in them. Dini got called into the office. Samantha got nominated by her dean because she saw the potential. Zannie was already in the deep end and was then given the opportunity also to find something, and what attracted her was the sense that there is a space being created, a safe space. And that really is what we are trying to do in WiL, is to say, how do we create a space? And I think everybody in leadership needs that. You need a space where you can speak to your vulnerabilities safely, where you can ask the questions about things that you don't know, because we all have questions to which we don't know the answers. And this became such a space. Zannie picked up on how important self-care was. And I think Dini alludes to it at the end as well, where she says, you've got to lead from as full a cup as possible for you. Sometimes that cup is going to get depleted, but if you're not leading from a full cup, from a healthy body, from a healthy mind, from a place where you feel supported, where you feel confident about who you are and what you are able to deliver, it's your leadership suffers. And so that's come through from everyone. The fact that we are living in a complex and difficult environment, it's just getting more and more complex and more difficult. You only have to read the newspapers to see the strife in which higher education has to operate nowadays. So I think, how does one prepare oneself for that? And self-care and feeling the best person you can be is really important. And so the coaching is a really important component of this program. Sometimes you have no one else to talk to. You can't talk to your boss because they put you there. They're so busy. You can't talk to the people who report to you because ethically, it can be favoritism. It can be regarded as transgressing confidentiality issues. So a coach plays a really important role. And as you've heard people say, thanks to the person who asked the question, coaching is not about telling you what to do. It's not like a sports coach that makes you run around the field or practice your laps or whatever. A coach really is there to help you think through things, to challenge you, to point out, to be a mirror, and to help you see what it is you have to offer. So coaching is a really important part of that program, somebody with whom you can safely speak through some of the issues that are making you feel vulnerable, but also help you work out your own solutions in the context, as Dini points out, that is very unique to you and where you are. And then really the whole issue about starting from who you are. The reflection and the introspection is really a really important part of leadership. And then you're never going to know everything. So, Samantha, your parting comment, which was about leading with humility, Dini's comment, Zannie's comments about knowing that it's about the people and the relationships with those people, the mentoring and the support you provide to those people, to be platforms, to become the best people they can be, to do the job that needs to be done, to make your division, your faculty, your university the best place it can be for the purpose for which it has been set up. That really is what leadership is all about. Leadership as hosting, as Zannie took from Prof Mutwa, but also leadership as convening or setting things up